So how exactly do you use big, medium, and small shapes in your character designs? Does it only help with silhouette? No. Character designs are fundamentally always about the distribution of shapes and how you break up those shapes. Big, medium, small shapes are found in the details of a character design, not only just the, I guess, like, the parts of it that, you know, like the silhouette only. I think once you actually see it done well for the first time, you recognize why it's important. Let me see, do I have an example that I can show? Where do I have... So, let me... I don't really have any of my actual things that I used for this, I don't think. But... let's see. So, for example, this character... when it came to dividing up... Oh. Hello. I want white. When it came to dividing up big, medium, and small shapes, there were a couple of things that I had to keep in mind. One, her legs were kind of the most important part about her. So, it had the biggest shape on... like, this is the big shape overall, right? Is this big, kind of rounded overall silhouette. But then in between that, I would break it up into smaller pieces. So not only was it going to be this big piece, but it also had smaller pieces on top of it. And then even smaller than that were these little tinier details. So big, medium, small shapes are found in everything. If you look at a character design that you really like, and it's not just, you know, consistent all around, you'll notice that there are areas where there's a high concentration of detail. Examples are, you know, like places like this, where there's a concentration of detail, right? And then there's like no detail at all here. Concentration of detail right here. And then not a ton of detail near the legs. And then concentration of detail right here. And then I only divided this bigger shape with a smaller concentration of detail right here. So, you know, that's also a form of the idea of big, medium, small. It's like separating out these pieces. So, like, I have a concentration of detail that's over here, but it's relatively small compared to this bigger shape in the middle. And then this medium shape here. And then these would be smaller shapes. So big, medium, small is in everything, right? It's a way that you can divide up your character to make spaces look interesting. You can use it to increase value in certain areas, increase focal points in certain areas. This can happen overall in a character. This can happen on a smaller level in a character, right? Like if I were to zoom in on one specific place, you could say this whole shape is kind of the big shape, the medium shapes, and then the small shapes. So then you have this like super tight macro environment right here. And then if you look at it in the scope of the bigger arm, you know, this is replicated over here. But then at the same time, if you look at it in the context of the arm itself, you also have, here's the big shape for the arm in particular, and then these are the medium shapes, and then again these are the small shapes. And then you can like continue to extend that to the whole body. So they're in everything. Big, medium, small shapes are like a core fundamental aspect of character design. Something that I think people don't really utilize often enough. So if you're ever looking at a character and you feel like, hey, they look kind of boring, it might be because you don't have a good proportion of these shapes. It could be that you have too many big shapes and not enough medium shapes to kind of slice that up. And maybe not enough sprinkling of small shapes to make small areas interesting. If it looks too busy and there's too much stuff happening, that's probably because you have way too many small shapes and not enough big or medium areas to kind of balance it out. If it feels kind of all over the place, it could be that you have too many medium shapes. You need to delete some details. You gotta focus specific small areas with a lot of, noise and a lot of busyness in contrast to open areas that don't have nearly as much detail. That's kind of where that applies. It's not just silhouettes, although silhouettes are an easy way to kind of quickly do this kind of stuff on the fly. A lot of this becomes a lot more important when you get to this sort of like detailing phase of figuring out what each of these things, how each of these things kind of correlate with each other. Hopefully that makes sense.